It was a crisp Saturday morning in the quiet suburban cul-de-sac of Maple Grove, where the scent of freshly mowed lawns and blooming azaleas usually greeted me. I stepped onto my porch, a steaming mug of coffee in hand, ready to savor the calm before my planned barbecue. But instead of tranquility, I was met with a surreal sight. 40 strangers sprawled across my front yard, clutching paper plates and plastic forks like they were at a county fair. A burly man in a flannel shirt balanced a Tupperware container under his arm, as if I were running a Michelin star catering service. A young boy licked his lips in anticipation, and an elderly woman in a floral dress waved at me like we were old bridge partners. Leading this chaotic parade was Margaret, the neighborhood's self-proclaimed matriarch. Decked out in a wide-brimmed sun hat, a chunky gold necklace, and gripping a clipboard like it was a sacred relic, she strutted across my lawn with the confidence of a drill sergeant. I stood frozen, still in my faded slippers and flannel pajama pants, my hair resembling a bird's nest after a restless night. Before I could process the absurdity, a voice bellowed from the crowd, "Grill's hot. Let's eat." The mob erupted in cheers, and I realized with dawning horror that Margaret had transformed my peaceful weekend into a full-blown circus without so much as a courtesy call. 2 days earlier, I'd planned a modest barbecue for myself and 5 close friends, Tom, Lisa, and a few others from my old book club. It was meant to be a low-key affair, slow-cooked ribs, smoked chicken wings, and juicy burgers to unwind from a grueling week at the accounting firm. Cooking is my sanctuary, the one place where the world's noise fades and numbers stop swirling in my head. I'd spent hours scrubbing the grill until it gleamed, arranging picnic tables in the backyard, and stringing fairy lights for a touch of charm. This was my therapy, my escape, not a block party for the entire zip code. But then Margaret had barged into my backyard, her wedge sandals clicking on the patio stones like a metronome. She didn't knock or announce herself. She just waltzed through the side gate as if she owned the place. I was in the middle of seasoning a tray of chicken, a bottle of paprika in hand, when she surveyed my setup with a smug nod. "This is perfect," she declared, as if she were judging a baking show. I blinked, confused. "Perfect for what, Margaret?" She gestured at the tables, the lights, the grill. "The HOA summer potluck. I sent the flyers out this morning. Everyone's talking about it." I nearly dropped the paprika. "What potluck?" Her smile was the kind that made you feel like you were about to be roped into something dreadful. "Barbecue and brews, Robert," she said, as if it were a done deal. "I promised them wings, but if you can't manage pork, just double up on the chicken." I stared, wondering if she'd lost her marbles. "Margaret, I'm not hosting anything. This is for my friends." Her smile vanished, replaced by a scowl. "Don't be selfish, Robert. You're always grilling. Share it with the neighborhood. The flyers are out, and I might have mentioned you're covering food and drinks." My jaw hit the ground. "You what?" She shrugged, as if it were no big deal, and sauntered off, leaving me in a cloud of her floral perfume and my fury. By evening, my phone was buzzing with texts from strangers asking about start times, what to bring, and whether they could bring their pets. One guy just wrote, "I'll bring beer, but it's mine." My plans were in tatters. Tom sent me a meme of a packed music festival, and Lisa texted a photo of Margaret's flyer taped to the community mailbox. My name was in bold, promising free barbecue and unlimited wings, over a stock photo of someone else's backyard. I wasn't just inconvenienced, I was being exploited, my name plastered across the neighborhood like a carnival barker's. The next morning, a neighbor I barely knew dropped off a stack of napkins, winking about my famous barbecue sauce. That's when the idea struck me, sharp and wicked. I opened my spice cabinet, my eyes landing on a jar of ghost peppers and a vial of Carolina Reaper powder, the kind with warning labels that practically screamed, "Proceed at your peril." I wasn't going to cancel my barbecue. I was going to cook, and Margaret was about to regret ever stepping through my gate. I called my old college buddy, Sanjay, who owns a small pepper farm upstate. He chuckled before I even finished explaining. "HOA drama again, huh?" he said. "I'll overnight you my hottest batch, plus a sauce called Devil's Breath." I dusted off my old GoPro cameras, setting them up around the yard, porch, grill, picnic tables, even one across the street for wide shots. If Margaret wanted a spectacle, I'd give her one in high definition. I made fake menu signs, safe wings for my friends, hellfire wings for everyone else, with tiny print warning, "Eat at your own risk." I printed liability waivers, just in case, and stashed mild wings for my crew in a cooler labeled VIP only. By sunrise, I was in the kitchen, apron on, safety goggles fogging up from the ghost pepper fumes. My golden retriever, Max, took one whiff of the marinade and bolted to the bedroom. The sauce smelled like a chemical spill, and I was ready for battle. The morning sun cast a golden glow over Maple Grove, a sleepy suburban enclave where picket fences and manicured lawns defined the landscape. I'd always cherished the quiet of Saturday mornings, when the world seemed to pause, and the only sounds were the chirping of sparrows and the distant hum of a lawnmower. That morning, I stepped onto my porch, a steaming mug of Folgers in hand, anticipating a day of relaxation. My plan was simple: a small barbecue for 5 close friends, a ritual to unwind from the soul-crushing monotony of my accounting job. But as I crossed the threshold, coffee mug raised to my lips, I froze. My front yard, usually a pristine patch of green, was a sea of chaos. 40 strangers sprawled across the grass, clutching paper plates and plastic forks like they were at a state fair. A burly man in a flannel shirt balanced a Tupperware container under his arm, eyeing my grill like it was a 5-star buffet. A young boy, no older than 10, licked his lips in anticipation, while an elderly woman in a floral dress waved at me with the familiarity of a lifelong friend. Leading this bizarre invasion was Margaret Thompson, Maple Grove's self-appointed queen. Decked out in a wide-brimmed sun hat, a chunky gold necklace, and gripping a clipboard like it was the Declaration of Independence, she strutted across my lawn with the confidence of a general. Her heels sank into the grass, but she didn't falter, her eyes scanning the crowd as if orchestrating a military campaign. I stood there, still in my faded slippers and flannel pajama pants, my graying hair a tangled mess from a restless night. Before I could process the absurdity, a voice bellowed from the back, "Grill's hot. Let's eat." The crowd erupted in cheers, plastic cups raised in a toast to a feast I hadn't agreed to provide. I realized, with a sinking dread, that Margaret had transformed my quiet weekend into a full-blown circus without so much as a text. 2 days earlier, I'd meticulously planned a barbecue for myself and 5 friends: Tom Henderson, Lisa Carter, and a few others from our old book club. It was meant to be intimate: slow-cooked ribs slathered in my homemade sauce, smoked chicken wings with a honey glaze, and juicy burgers grilled to perfection. Cooking was my refuge, the one place where the chaos of spreadsheets and deadlines melted away. For weeks, I'd looked forward to this day, spending hours scrubbing the grill until it gleamed, arranging picnic tables in the backyard, and stringing fairy lights for a touch of ambience. I'd even splurged on a new set of tongs, the kind with a satisfying click that made me feel like a pitmaster. This was my therapy, my escape, not a block party for the entire zip code. But Margaret had other plans. On Thursday afternoon, as I was seasoning a tray of chicken in my backyard, she barged through the side gate, her wedge sandals clicking on the patio stones like a metronome. She didn't knock or announce herself. She just waltzed in, her floral perfume assaulting my senses. I was mid-shake with a bottle of paprika, the air thick with the scent of garlic and cumin, when she surveyed my setup with a smug nod. "This is perfect," she declared, as if she were judging a reality cooking show. I blinked, confused, a dusting of paprika settling on my sneakers. "Perfect for what, Margaret?" She gestured at the tables, the lights, the grill. "The HOA summer potluck. I sent the flyers out this morning. Everyone's talking about it." I nearly dropped the bottle. "What potluck?" Her smile was the kind that made you feel like you were about to be roped into something dreadful, like chairing the HOA's holiday decorating committee. "Barbecue and brews, Robert," she said, as if it were a done deal. "I promised them wings, but if you can't manage pork, just double up on the chicken." I stared, wondering if she'd lost her marbles. "Margaret, I'm not hosting anything. This is for my friends." Her smile vanished, replaced by a scowl that could curdle milk. "Don't be selfish, Robert. You're always grilling. Share it with the neighborhood. The flyers are out, and I might have mentioned you're covering food and drinks." My jaw hit the ground. "You what?" She shrugged, as if it were no big deal, and sauntered off, leaving me in a cloud of her perfume and my fury. I stood there, paprika bottle still in hand, as the weight of her words sank in. She'd hijacked my barbecue, my sanctuary, and turned it into a public event without my consent. My phone began buzzing, a relentless stream of texts from strangers asking about start times, what to bring, and whether they could bring their dogs. One guy, identifying himself only as Dave, wrote, "I'll bring beer, but it's mine." I scrolled through the messages, my blood pressure climbing with each notification. Tom sent me a meme of a packed music festival with the caption, "Your backyard tomorrow." Lisa texted a photo of Margaret's flyer, taped to the community mailbox like a wanted poster. My name was in bold, promising free barbecue and unlimited wings, over a stock photo of someone else's backyard. The flyer even included a clip-art burger with a chef's hat, as if I were running a diner. I wasn't just inconvenienced, I was being exploited, my name plastered across Maple Grove like a carnival barker's. That evening, I tried to salvage my plans. I called Tom, hoping for advice, but he just laughed. "Margaret's at it again, huh? Good luck, man." Lisa suggested I cancel, but the thought of scrapping my barbecue, the one thing I'd been looking forward to all month, felt like defeat. I paced the kitchen, Max, my golden retriever, watching me with a tilted head. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Margaret hadn't just overstepped. She'd trampled my boundaries, assuming I'd roll over because she waved her clipboard. I wasn't a pushover, not anymore. At 52, I'd spent too many years swallowing my frustrations dealing with demanding clients, navigating office politics, and now, apparently, fending off HOA tyrants. This was my line in the sand. The next morning, a neighbor I barely knew, Mrs. Jenkins from across the street, dropped off a stack of napkins, winking about my famous barbecue sauce. She'd seen the flyer and assumed I was hosting the event of the season. "Can't wait for those wings, Robert," she chirped before shuffling back to her house. That's when the idea struck me, sharp and wicked, like a spark from a flint. I opened my spice cabinet, my eyes landing on a jar of ghost peppers and a vial of Carolina Reaper powder, relics from a chili cook-off I'd entered years ago. The labels warned of extreme heat, practically begging for a lawsuit. I wasn't going to cancel my barbecue. I was going to cook, and Margaret was about to regret ever stepping through my gate. I called Sanjay, my old college buddy who'd traded a desk job for a pepper farm upstate. He answered on the first ring, his voice warm with amusement. "HOA drama again, huh?" he said before I could finish explaining. "Let me guess, Margaret?" I laid out the situation, and he laughed so hard I thought he'd drop the phone. "I'll overnight you my hottest batch," he promised, "plus a sauce called Devil's Breath. It's not for the faint of heart." I thanked him, a grin spreading across my face. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my space, my peace, my barbecue. I dusted off my old GoPro cameras, relics from a short-lived hiking phase, and set them up around the yard, porch, grill, picnic tables, even one across the street for wide shots. If Margaret wanted a spectacle, I'd give her one in high definition. I spent the evening crafting fake menu signs, safe wings for my friends, hellfire wings for everyone else, with tiny print warning, "Eat at your own risk." I printed liability waivers, just in case, and stashed mild wings for my crew in a cooler labeled VIP only. By midnight, I was in the kitchen, apron on, safety goggles fogging up from the ghost pepper fumes. Max took one whiff of the marinade and bolted to the bedroom, tail tucked. The sauce smelled like a chemical spill, a pungent mix of vinegar and pure malice. I stirred it with a wooden spoon, feeling like a mad scientist on the verge of something glorious. As I worked, I imagined Margaret's smug face, her clipboard, her entitlement. She'd assumed I'd comply, that I'd let her steamroll me because that's what people did in Maple Grove. Nodded, smiled, and let Margaret run the show. Not this time. I wasn't just cooking wings. I was crafting a reckoning. By sunrise, the marinade was ready, a molten concoction that made my eyes water even through the goggles. I set up the grill, arranged the tables, and checked the cameras. The stage was set, and Maple Grove was about to learn what happens when you crash Robert Sullivan's barbecue. By 10 a.m., my backyard had transformed into a zoo. The quiet hum of Maple Grove was drowned out by the chatter of strangers, the clatter of folding chairs, and a Bluetooth speaker blaring classic rock from someone's cooler. Kids chased a beach ball across my lawn, flattening my carefully tended marigolds and knocking over my ceramic garden gnome. Neighbors I'd never met set up camp with picnic blankets and sun umbrellas, as if my yard were a public park. One woman, in a tie-dye shirt and flip-flops, asked if I had gluten-free buns, while a man with a handlebar mustache demanded to know where the vegan options were. I stood at the grill, tongs in hand, trying to maintain my composure as the crowd swelled. My fairy lights swayed in the breeze, mocking the serene evening I'd envisioned with my friends. Margaret arrived last, strutting through the gate like a pageant queen. Her wide-brimmed hat cast a shadow over her clipboard, and a Bluetooth headset blinked in her ear, as if she were coordinating a NASA launch. She barked orders at a group of teenagers setting up a drink table, then turned her attention to me. "Robert, hose down the swings later," she said, not bothering to look up from her clipboard, "and move the dessert table to the shade. It's melting." I didn't respond, my focus fixed on the grill, where the first batch of Hellfire wings sizzled. The air was thick with the scent of charcoal and something far more sinister, a faint, acrid bite that hinted at the chaos to come. I'd spent the morning perfecting my setup. The GoPro cameras were rolling, capturing every angle of the impending disaster. The fake menu signs were propped up on the picnic tables, their warnings in fine print ignored by the crowd. The liability waivers sat in a wicker basket near the serving station, untouched. In the VIP cooler, mild wings waited for Tom, Lisa, and the others, while the Hellfire wings marinated in Sanjay's Devil's Breath sauce and dusted with Carolina Reaper powder gleamed under the sun, their glossy surfaces hiding their true nature. I'd even set up a small table with water pitchers and napkins, a deceptive gesture of hospitality. My goggles were tucked away, but the faint sting in my eyes reminded me of the marinade's potency. Max, still hiding in the bedroom, was the smartest one in the house. The crowd swarmed the serving station, ignoring the extreme eaters-only sign and the waiver basket. A lanky guy in a baseball cap grabbed a handful of Hellfire wings, muttering about his love for spicy food. A woman in a sundress piled her plate high, chatting with her friend about a hot sauce festival she'd attended. Margaret, ever the ringleader, pushed her way to the front, her gold necklace glinting as she snatched 3 wings. "I eat Cajun all the time," she boasted, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "This is nothing." She bit down, and for a fleeting moment, time seemed to stop. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating like saucers. The clipboard slipped from her hand, clattering onto the grass. A strangled wheeze escaped her lips as she tried to play it cool, mumbling, tasty," through gritted teeth. Sweat beaded on her forehead, trickling down her face, and smudging her mascara. She fanned herself with the clipboard, her composure unraveling as the ghost peppers took hold. The crowd, oblivious at first, began to notice. The lanky guy in the baseball cap coughed violently, his face turning a shade of crimson I'd never seen on a human. The sundressed woman gasped, dropping her plate and sprinting toward the garden hose. A kid, who'd sneaked a wing from his mom's plate, screamed, "It's lava," and dove into my shrubs, clutching his mouth. Chaos spread like wildfire. The Bluetooth speaker cut off mid-song as its owner chugged a soda, only to spit it out when the carbonation amplified the burn. A middle-aged man with a beer belly sobbed under my patio umbrella, muttering, "Why did I take seconds?" The hose became a lifeline, with people shoving each other to spray their faces, soaking their clothes, and turning my lawn into a muddy mess. A woman coughed so hard she tipped over the coleslaw bowl, sending it splattering across the picnic table. Another neighbor, a retired teacher I recognized from the community center, ran to her car and returned with a gallon of milk, sparking a stampede as the crowd fought for a sip. Plastic cups littered the ground, and the air filled with a symphony of coughs, curses, and desperate pleas for relief. Margaret, meanwhile, was losing her battle. She chugged a can of soda, her hands shaking, but the sugar only intensified the heat. Her sun hat tilted precariously as she pointed a trembling finger at me. "What's in these?" she rasped, her voice barely audible over the chaos. I shrugged, pointing to the sign. "Ghost peppers, Margaret. It's labeled." She opened her mouth to argue, but another wave of heat hit, and she doubled over, clutching her stomach. The crowd parted around her, some laughing, others too busy with their suffering to care. I stood at the grill, handing out napkins with the calm of a monk, my face a mask of innocence. Inside, I was reveling in the spectacle. This was no longer a barbecue. It was a reckoning. Tom arrived just as the madness peaked, his pickup truck pulling into the driveway. He took one look at the hose guy now sprawled on the grass. Water dripping from his beard and raised an eyebrow. "What in the hot sauce hell is this?" he asked, stepping over a discarded paper plate. I handed him a mild wing from the VIP cooler. "Margaret's buffet," I said with a smirk. "I just brought the heat." Lisa showed up minutes later, her camera already out, snapping photos of the chaos. "This is going viral," she said, zooming in on Margaret, who was now fanning herself with a soggy napkin. My other friends trickled in, each grabbing a safe wing and settling in to watch the show. They knew better than to cross me when I had a plan. The afternoon wore on, and the crowd began to thin. People limped away, clutching their stomachs and muttering about lawsuits, though the waivers and warning signs protected me. The milk jug was empty, the hose was a muddy tangle, and my yard looked like the aftermath of a chilly festival gone wrong. Margaret, her makeup streaked and her hat askew, stormed off without a word, her heels sinking into the grass with every step. I caught her glance back at me, a mix of fury and humiliation, and I winked at the nearest GoPro. "Spicy nightmare," I whispered to the lens. "Coming soon." As the last stragglers left, I surveyed the damage. The picnic tables were littered with half-eaten wings and crumpled napkins. The fairy lights hung crooked, one strand dangling like a broken promise. My gnome lay in pieces, a casualty of the beach ball rampage. But I felt no regret, only a strange, triumphant calm. I'd reclaimed my barbecue, my yard, my peace. Margaret had wanted a spectacle, and I'd delivered one she'd never forget. Tom clapped me on the shoulder, still chuckling. "You're a madman, Robert. But damn, that was worth it." Lisa was already uploading her photos to the neighborhood Facebook group, captioned, "Maple Grove's hottest potluck." That night, I sat in my living room, Max curled up at my feet, and began editing the GoPro footage. Margaret's face going from smug to scorched, the hose guy's desperate sprint, the milk stampede was all there, a masterpiece of poetic justice. I titled the video "The Inferno Wing Debacle" and uploaded it to my food blog, scheduling it to go live the next morning. As I hit publish, I leaned back in my chair, sipping a cold beer. Maple Grove was about to learn what happens when you mess with Robert Sullivan's grill. But as the adrenaline faded, a small voice in my head wondered, had I gone too far? Would the fallout be worth the satisfaction? The next morning, I woke to the faint buzz of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Bleary-eyed, I reached for it, expecting a text from Tom or Lisa about the previous day's chaos. Instead, my notifications were a wildfire of their own. My food blog, usually a quiet corner of the internet with a few dozen followers, had exploded overnight. The Inferno Wing Debacle video had racked up 5,000 views by breakfast, and the numbers were climbing. Comments flooded in, a mix of laughter, outrage, and everything in between. "Margaret got what she deserved," wrote one user. "This is chemical warfare," grumbled another. Someone with the handle Chili King 99 begged for the Hellfire Wing recipe, while a local hot sauce brand slid into my inbox with a sponsorship offer. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee growing cold, scrolling through the chaos I'd unleashed. Maple Grove was abuzz in more ways than one. By noon, the video had hit 30,000 views, and the neighborhood was split down the middle. Some neighbors thought I was a hero, a David who'd slain the Goliath of HOA tyranny with a slingshot of ghost peppers. Mrs. Jenkins, the napkin-bringing neighbor, stopped by with a plate of brownies and a wink. "You showed Margaret who's boss," she said, her eyes twinkling. Others weren't so amused. The guy with the handlebar mustache, whose name I learned was Carl, posted on the community Facebook group, accusing me of endangering the cul-de-sac. A woman I vaguely recognized from the milk stampede claimed her stomach was still churning and threatened to call a lawyer, though she hadn't signed the waiver, so good luck with that. Margaret, predictably, didn't take her public scorching lightly. By mid-afternoon, I received a formal letter from the HOA, printed on official letterhead and stuffed in my mailbox. It was a complaint, signed by Margaret Thompson, accusing me of malicious intent, public endangerment, and, bizarrely, defamation of character. She claimed her sunglasses had melted from the heat of the Wingsa detail, so absurd I laughed out loud. Max, sensing my amusement, thumped his tail on the floor. The letter demanded a formal apology and threatened fines if I didn't comply. Attached was a blurry photo of Margaret Midwees, her mascara streaked like a raccoon's, which she'd somehow thought would bolster her case. I wasn't worried. The GoPro footage, waivers, and warning signs were my shield. I emailed the HOA president, Mr. Harold Grayson, a retired pharmacist with a dry sense of humor, attaching a screenshot of the waiver table captioned, "See Exhibit A." Harold called me an hour later, chuckling so hard he could barely speak. "Watch your video 3 times, Robert," he said. "Spilled my coffee when Margaret screamed. But she's madder than a wet hen, so brace yourself." I thanked him, feeling a flicker of unease. Margaret wasn't just embarrassed, she was out for blood. The HOA scheduled a hearing for the following week, a rare event in Maple Grove, where disputes usually involved mailbox colors or overgrown hedges. Word spread, and the neighborhood buzzed with anticipation. Lisa texted me a meme of a courtroom gavel labeled "Spicy Justice," while Tom offered to bring popcorn to the hearing. I spent the days leading up to it preparing my defense, compiling evidence like a lawyer on a deadline. I printed stills from the GoPro footage, Margaret grabbing wings despite the warning sign, her flyer with my name in bold, the untouched waiver basket. I even included a screenshot of her Facebook post from the morning of the potluck, where she'd bragged about organizing the best barbecue Maple Grove has ever seen. If she wanted a fight, I was ready. Meanwhile, my blog was becoming a minor internet sensation. By the evening before the hearing, the video had hit 100,000 views, and comments poured in from strangers across the country. "HOA Karens are the worst," wrote one. "You're a legend, Robert," said another. A chili farm in New Mexico emailed, offering to sponsor my next cookout, and Sanjay called to say he'd sold out of Devil's Breath sauce thanks to my video. The attention was intoxicating, but it came with a shadow. Some comments called me a bully, accusing me of humiliating not just Margaret but the entire crowd. "Funny, but cruel," wrote a user named Peaceful Gardener. "You could have just said no." The word stung, planting a seed of doubt. Had I gone too far? Was the satisfaction worth the collateral damage? The hearing took place in the community center, a beige room smelling of stale coffee and lemon cleaner. The HOA board, 5 retirees with clipboards of their own, sat at a folding table, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Margaret arrived in a navy blazer and pearls, her cousin, a wiry man claiming to be a lawyer, trailing behind her. The room was packed with neighbors, some there for the drama, others to take sides. Mrs. Jenkins gave me a thumbs up from the back row, while Carl glowered from the front. Margaret took the floor first, her voice trembling with rehearsed indignation. She recounted the potluck as a traumatizing ordeal, claiming the wings had given her nightmares of flames and ruined her reputation. Her cousin waved a stack of papers, citing emotional distress and potential health risks. The board listened politely, though Harold stifled a yawn. When it was my turn, I stood, my evidence folder in hand. I spoke calmly, laying out the timeline. Margaret's uninvited intrusion, her flyer, her refusal to back down. I passed out copies of the warning signs, waivers, and video stills, letting the images speak for themselves. The room murmured as neighbors saw Margaret's flyer, her bold claims about Robert's barbecue glaring in black and white. I ended by playing a short clip from the GoPro, showing Margaret grabbing wings and dismissing the warning with a laugh. The room erupted in chuckles, and her cousin tripped over his briefcase trying to object. The board deliberated for 10 minutes before dismissing the complaint. "Next time, Margaret, ask permission," Harold said, his tone final. She stormed out, her cousin scrambling after her, and the room broke into applause. I should have felt triumphant, but as I left the community center, a weight settled in my chest. The video's success, the HOA's ruling, the neighborhood's laughter, it was all intoxicating, but it came at a cost. Margaret's humiliation was public, permanent, and etched into the internet for anyone to see. I'd won, but at what price? The question gnawed at me as I drove home, Max's head resting on my lap. That evening, I checked my blog. The video had hit 150,000 views, and the comments were a battlefield of opinions. Some called for Margaret's head, others for mine. I closed my laptop, unsure whether to bask in the victory or question my methods. The next day, I heard through the grapevine that Margaret was planning an apology brunch at the community center, a desperate attempt to spin the narrative. She'd invited the entire neighborhood, promising mimosas and a chance to heal the community. Lisa texted me a photo of the invitation, which claimed I'd misled Margaret into thinking the potluck was my idea. The audacity was staggering. I could have ignored it, let her flounder in her lies, but a spark of defiance flared. If Margaret wanted to rewrite history, I'd give her an audience she couldn't ignore. I showed up to the brunch early, a projector tucked under my arm. The community center was decked out with white tablecloths and vases of daisies, a forced attempt at elegance. Neighbors milled about, sipping orange juice and whispering about the potluck. Margaret, in a pastel dress and a forced smile, greeted guests like a politician. When she saw me, her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, ushering me to a seat. I waited until the room was full, then stood, plugging in the projector. "I have something to share," I said, my voice steady. I played the unedited GoPro footage, Margaret's orders, her wing bite, the chaos that followed. The room erupted in laughter, glasses clinking as neighbors toasted the spectacle. Margaret dropped her tray of pastries, the crash echoing in the silence that followed. She fled, her heels clicking down the hall, and the applause chased her out. That night, a note appeared under my door, scrawled in Margaret's precise handwriting. "Sorry, Robert. You were right." I stared at it, the weight in my chest lifting slightly. Margaret went quiet after that, her daily HOA patrols a thing of the past. My blog continued to climb, and the neighborhood began to feel like home again, free of her clipboard tyranny. But as I sat on my porch, sipping lemonade and watching the sunset, I couldn't shake the question, had the spice been worth the saga? The weeks following the apology brunch were a strange mix of triumph and introspection. Maple Grove settled into an uneasy calm, like the quiet after a summer storm. Margaret's absence from her usual HOA patrols was noticeable, her clipboard no longer a fixture at mailboxes or community bulletin boards. Neighbors whispered about her retreat, some with glee, others with a touch of sympathy. My blog, meanwhile, had become a local legend, with the Inferno Wing debacle video surpassing 200,000 views. Comments continued to pour in, ranging from praise for my audacity to critiques of my methods. A hot sauce company sent me a care package with their latest blends, and Sanjay's Pepper Farm offered me a partnership for a Maple Grove Inferno sauce. The attention was flattering, but it came with a lingering unease. Had I crossed a line, turning a personal grievance into a public spectacle? I spent my evenings on the porch, Max at my feet, sipping lemonade and scrolling through the comments. Some called me a hero for standing up to Margaret's tyranny, others a petty instigator who'd humiliated a woman just trying to bring the neighborhood together. One comment, from a user named Reflective Soul, stuck with me. "You won the battle, but what about the war? Revenge feels good, but it doesn't build bridges." The words hit harder than I expected, stirring memories of my younger self, the hot-headed accountant who'd once gotten into a shouting match with a coworker over a misplaced report. At 52, I thought I'd outgrown that impulsiveness, but the ghost peppers suggested otherwise. I began to wonder if there was a way to channel this energy into something constructive, something that could heal the rift I'd helped create. The opportunity came sooner than expected. A week after the brunch, Harold Grayson, the HOA president, called me with an offer. "The board's been talking," he said, his voice warm with amusement. "We want you to host the annual Maple Grove Cook-Off. No tricks, just good food. You're the best grill-aster we've got." I hesitated, the memory of the potluck still fresh. The last thing I wanted was another circus in my backyard. But Harold's tone was earnest, and I could hear the unspoken plea. The neighborhood needed this, a chance to come together without waivers or warning signs. "I'll do it," I said finally, "but on my terms. Mild flavors only." Harold chuckled. "Deal." Planning the cook-off became my new obsession. I threw myself into it with the same zeal I'd applied to the Hellfire Wings, but this time, the goal was unity, not revenge. I spent days perfecting my menu. Tender ribs with a tangy molasses glaze, honey-glazed wings that wouldn't set anyone's mouth on fire, and burgers stacked with crisp lettuce and ripe tomatoes. I sourced ingredients from local farms, including Sanjay's milder peppers for a subtle kick. I repaired the fairy lights, replaced the shattered garden gnome with a sturdier model, and borrowed extra tables from the community center. Lisa volunteered to handle decorations, stringing up banners that read Maple Grove Cook-Off, a taste of community. Tom offered to DJ, promising a playlist of classic rock and Motown to keep the vibe light. Even Mrs. Jenkins chipped in, baking trays of her famous brownies. The neighborhood buzzed with anticipation, but I sensed skepticism beneath the excitement. Carl, the handlebar mustache guy, posted on the Facebook group, "Hope this isn't another spice trap." Others wondered if Margaret would show up, and if so, whether she'd bring her clipboard. I didn't blame them for their doubts. I'd earned my reputation as the ghost pepper guy. To ease concerns, I posted a video on my blog, standing in my backyard with Max at my side. "No tricks this time," I said, holding up a mild wing. "Just good food and good company. Let's make this a day to remember for the right reasons. The video got a few thousand views, and the comments were cautiously optimistic. I'll bring my stretchy pants, wrote Chili King 99. The day of the cook-off dawned bright and clear, the kind of September morning that made Maple Grove feel like a postcard. By noon, my backyard was alive with music, laughter, and the sizzle of the grill. Neighbors arrived with side dishes, potato salad, baked beans, coleslaw, turning the event into a true potluck, but one I'd willingly signed up for. Kids played tag on the lawn, careful to avoid my new gnome. Tom's playlist kept the energy high, with Stevie Wonder's "Isn't She Lovely" drawing smiles from the older crowd. Lisa's banners fluttered in the breeze, and the fairy lights glowed as the sun dipped low. For the first time in weeks, I felt at ease, tongs in hand, smoke curling around me like a warm embrace. The turnout was bigger than I'd expected, with nearly 60 people filling the yard. Mrs. Jenkins manned the dessert table, her brownies disappearing faster than I could flip burgers. Harold and the HOA board mingled, passing out paper plates and chatting with neighbors. Even Carl showed up, his mustache twitching as he sniffed the ribs suspiciously before taking a bite. "Not bad," he grunted, grabbing a second helping. I caught snippets of conversation of school fundraisers, fall festivals, and the upcoming election. It felt like Maple Grove was knitting itself back together, one bite at a time. Then, just as I was pulling a fresh batch of wings from the grill, I saw her. Margaret stood at the edge of the yard, hesitant, her usual sun hat and clipboard nowhere in sight. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. For a moment, our eyes met, and I braced for a confrontation. But she didn't approach the serving table or demand attention. Instead, she joined the line, took a plate, and served herself a modest portion of ribs and coleslaw. She ate quietly at a picnic table, exchanging small talk with Mrs. Jenkins. When she finished, she caught my eye again, gave a slight nod, and left without a word. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was something gesture of peace, or at least a truce. As the evening wound down, Harold took the microphone from Tom's DJ setup. "Folks, let's give a hand to Robert Sullivan," he said, his voice booming. "He's shown us what community looks like: resilience, good food, and a damn fine grill." The crowd cheered, and Harold handed me a small plaque engraved with Maple Grove Community Builder. I held it up, my throat tight, and managed a quick "thank you." The applause felt different from the laughter at the brunch warmer, more genuine. For the first time, I felt like I belonged in Maple Grove, not just as the guy with the grill, but as part of something bigger. That night, I sat in my living room, Max snoring on the rug, and uploaded a final video to my blog. It was a montage of the cook-off, kids laughing, neighbors dancing, plates piled high with food. I included a clip of Margaret's nod, a subtle acknowledgement of our détente. Titled Maple Grove Cook-Off, a fresh start, the video was my way of closing the chapter. By morning, it had 10,000 views, with comments praising the turnaround. "This is how you rebuild," wrote Reflective Soul. "Well done, Robert." But even as I basked in the glow of redemption, I couldn't fully shake the questions that had haunted me since the potluck. Had my revenge been justified, or had I let anger drive me too far? Margaret's actions were wrong, intrusive, entitled, unforgivable in the moment, but my response had escalated the feud into a public firestorm. I'd humiliated her, yes, but I'd also hurt others, from the hose guy to the kid who'd cried in my shrubs. The cook-off had mended some of those wounds, but it didn't erase them. As I sipped my lemonade, watching the blog's likes climb, I realized the true cost of the saga wasn't in the ruined lawn or the broken gnome. It was in the trust I'd risked, the community I'd nearly fractured, and the version of myself I'd briefly become. The success of the Maple Grove cook-off marked a turning point, not just for me, but for the entire neighborhood. The plaque from the HOA, now propped on my mantel next to a photo of Max, was a tangible reminder of what I'd achieved, not just a victory over Margaret's overreach, but a step toward rebuilding a community I'd nearly torn apart. My blog, once a modest outlet for grilling tips and recipes, had become a platform with a life of its own. The Maple Grove cook-off video was approaching 50,000 views, and the comments were overwhelmingly positive, filled with neighbors sharing memories of the day and strangers asking when the next event would be. Yet, as I sat on my porch that autumn evening, the air crisp with the promise of falling leaves, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me here. The ghost peppers, the GoPros, The chouse had all felt like a lifetime ago, but its lessons lingered, sharp and undeniable. The weeks after the cook-off were a whirlwind. The HOA, emboldened by the event's success, asked me to join their planning committee, a role I accepted with cautious optimism. I wasn't ready to trade my tongs for a clipboard, but I saw it as a chance to keep Maple Grove's newfound spirit alive. We started small, organizing a fall cleanup day where neighbors raked leaves and planted bulbs for spring. Carl, still grumbling about the potluck, showed up with a rake and a grudging nod, his mustache twitching as he worked alongside me. Mrs. Jenkins brought thermos jugs of hot cider, and Lisa turned the cleanup into a photo op for the community newsletter. It wasn't glamorous, but it was progress proof that Maple Grove could be more than a battleground for petty feuds. Margaret remained a quiet presence. She attended the cleanup day, wearing a flannel jacket and work gloves, and helped mulch the community garden without fanfare. Our interactions were brief but civil. And "Not here. Nice job there." Her note of apology still sat on my kitchen counter, a reminder of her concession, but I didn't bring it up. She'd lost her throne as the neighborhood's self-appointed queen, and that seemed punishment enough. Some neighbors speculated she'd move away, tired of the whispers and sideways glances, but she stayed, her house as immaculate as ever, her daily patrols replaced by morning walks with a small terrier. I didn't wish her ill, I just wanted my backyard to stay mine. My blog, meanwhile, was evolving. The hot sauce company that had sent me samples offered a sponsorship deal, and Sanjay's Maple Grove Inferno sauce hit the market, with my face grinning beside a grill on the label. I used the platform to share more than recipes, posting videos about community events and the importance of setting boundaries. One post, titled "Lessons from the Grill," reflected on the potluck debacle, admitting my role in escalating the conflict. "Revenge tastes sweet," I wrote, "but it leaves a bitter aftertaste. Building something better, that's the real win." The post resonated, earning thousands of shares and comments from people who'd faced their own Margarets. "You're human, Robert," wrote Reflective Soul. "Thanks for owning it." The attention brought opportunities one hadn't anticipated. A local TV station invited me to appear on their morning show, where I demonstrated a mild wing recipe and told a sanitized version of the potluck story, focusing on the cook-off's success. The host, a cheerful woman named Karen, laughed at my description of the fairy lights and asked if I'd consider hosting a cooking class. The idea stuck, and soon I was teaching a weekly grilling workshop at the community center, where neighbors of all ages learned to master the perfect sear. Carl became a regular, his skepticism giving way to a surprising knack for marinades. Even Harold dropped by, joking that my ribs were better than his pharmacist's precision. As winter approached, I began planning the next cook-off, determined to make it an annual tradition. I envisioned a chili cook-off, with categories for mild, medium, and hot, but strict rules against ghost peppers. The HOA board approved the idea, and Lisa designed a logo featuring a smiling chili pepper in a chef's hat. We set the date for early spring, when Maple Grove's gardens would be blooming, and the air would carry the promise of renewal. I posted a teaser video on my blog, promising flavor, not fire, and the response was electric. Chili King 99 commented, "Sign me up, but keep the Reaper away." Even Sanjay pledged to attend, bringing his family and a batch of his mildest peppers. The planning kept me busy, but it also gave me time to reflect on the bigger picture. The potluck had been a flashpoint, a clash of wills that exposed the fault lines in our community. Margaret's entitlement, my retaliation, the neighbors' complicity in the chouse had all pointed to a deeper truth. We'd forgotten how to talk to each other, how to respect boundaries while still sharing space. My revenge had been satisfying, but it was the cook-off, the cleanup days, the grilling classes that showed me what was possible when we worked together. I'd started as the ghost pepper guy, a lone grill-aster with a grudge, but I'd become something more: a neighbor, a builder, a voice for second chances. One evening, as I was testing a new chili recipe, I got a call from Margaret. Her voice was hesitant, lacking the commanding tone I'd once dreaded. "Robert, I'm entering the chili cook-off," she said. "Just wanted you to know. No hard feelings." I was caught off guard, my ladle hovering over the pot. "That's great, Margaret," I managed. "What's your recipe?" She laughed, a sound I hadn't heard before. "It's mild. Learned my lesson." We chatted for a few minutes, not as enemies, but as neighbors with a shared history. When I hung up, I felt a weight lift, when I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The chili cook-off arrived on a perfect April day, with clear skies and a gentle breeze. My backyard was transformed once again, this time with chili stations lining the lawn, each decorated with colorful banners. Neighbors brought their best recipes, from smoky beef chili to vegetarian blends bursting with beans. Tom manned the sound system, playing a mix of Johnny Cash and Aretha Franklin, while Lisa judged the presentation category, her camera snapping away. The turnout was massive, with over 100 people filling the yard, their laughter mingling with the aroma of simmering spices. Harold awarded prizes, handing out ribbons for best flavor, most creative, and crowd favorite. Margaret's mild chicken chili took third place in the mild category, and when her name was called, she accepted the ribbon with a shy smile, the crowd clapping warmly. As the sun set, I stood at the grill, serving up cornbread to go with the chili. The fairy lights glowed, casting a soft warmth over the scene. Kids chased fireflies, and neighbors swapped stories, their plates balanced on their laps. I caught Margaret's eye across the yard, and we exchanged a nod, a silent acknowledgement of the road we'd traveled. The plaque on my mantel had called me a community builder, and for the first time, I believed it. The potluck had been a fire, but the cook-a-fan now the chili cook-off where the embers, warm and lasting. That night, I uploaded a final video to my blog, a montage of the chili cook-off, steaming pots, smiling faces, Margaret's ribbon moment. Titled, Maple Grove's Chili Comeback, it was my love letter to the neighborhood that had tested me, broken me, and rebuilt me. The video ended with a message, life's spicy, but it's the mild moments that bring us together. Thanks, Maple Grove, for teaching me that. By morning, it had 20,000 views, with comments flooding in. You turned a feud into a family, wrote Reflective Soul. That's the real victory. As I sat on my porch, Max at my feet, I thought about the saga's true cost and reward. The ghost peppers had been a weapon, a way to reclaim my space, but they'd also been a mirror, showing me the anger I'd let fester. Margaret's actions were wrong, but my response had amplified the conflict, hurting others in the crossfire. The cook-offs, the classes, the quiet nods with Margaret, they were my atonement, proof that redemption was possible, even after a firestorm. I'd started this journey wanting to win, but I ended it wanting to connect. That, I realized, was the legacy I'd leave on Maple Grove's grill. To my readers and neighbors, I ask you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Was my spicy revenge justified, or did it go too far? How do you handle injustice in your own life, through confrontation, like my ghost peppers, or through quieter means, like the cook-off? What does this story say about violence, whether physical or emotional, and the search for fairness in our communities? Take a stand, share your perspective, and let's keep the conversation cooking. Your voice matters, and I'm listening.